May 1944, Cherbourg, France. The wildflower. A simple purple campanula, extended from the American soldier's hand, bewildered the German Luftwaffenhelferin, who had expected rifle butts, not botany. After months managing Nazi anti-aircraft radar systems, subsisting on dwindling rations of turnip bread and ersatz coffee, this small gesture of humanity represented impossibility made real. The flower, casualties, humiliation, these were the rewards of surrender. Nazi propaganda had drilled into 26-year-old Ilse Braun and the 371 women auxiliaries captured in the Allied advance across Normandy. Across temporary holding camps that spring, 3,427 German women would confront a reality that contradicted everything. Goebbels' propaganda had taught them about American barbarity. They discovered a military that provided female guards from the Women's Army Corps, that offered medical examinations by female doctors, that separated women prisoners from men with scrupulous propriety. These simple courtesies, protocols that Nazi propaganda claimed Americans were incapable of, would systematically demolish fascist ideology more effectively than any counter-indoctrination program. The arithmetic of decency was being written in small considerations, in proper rations, in unexpected moments of dignity, revealing an American character that rendered German deprivation not noble sacrifice, but needless cruelty. What began as shock at American restraint would evolve into complete psychological transformation. The collapse of Atlantic defenses. The Allied breakthrough at Saint-Lô during June 1944 brought approximately 400 German women auxiliaries into American custody. These Luftwaffenhelferinnen, Nachrichtenhelferinnen, and Stabshelferinnen, who had operated communications equipment, plotted aircraft movements, and managed administrative functions, expected degradation as prisoners. Nazi psychological operations had prepared them for American savagery and sexual violence. Instead, within hours of surrender, they encountered American female military police. These WOCs, impeccably uniformed women, who carried sidearms and gave orders to male soldiers, conducted searches with professional detachment. Processing records show initial medical examinations included female American doctors, multivitamin supplements, and treatment for minor ailments many women had endured for months. German women, who had survived on diminishing rations, received 2,400 calorie meals, including fresh bread, eggs, and coffee with real sugar. The systematic treatment of female enemies with dignity began immediately, though its psychological impact would only be understood later. A German communications auxiliary later testified to the International Red Cross, "We expected to be violated and humiliated. Instead, the Americans treated us with more respect than our own military had." This confusion about American character began our education. The temporary camps established near Cherbourg provided intensive exposure to American gender relations. These facilities, separated by sex in accordance with Geneva Conventions, housed women in conditions surpassing anything available to German civilians. Naval records confirm that women's rations matched WEB provisions, approximately 2,400 calories daily, including dairy products absent from German diets for years. Most remarkably, documented accounts confirm that American officers ordered local wildflowers collected to decorate women's quarters. The processing center logbook from June 1944 records, Lieutenant Peterson directed collection of regional flowers for female internment area. Morale consideration. For women who hadn't seen fresh flowers since the war's early days, these simple bouquets placed in military-issue canteens defied understanding. Nazi propaganda had prepared them for American monsters. Instead, they encountered soldiers who picked flowers for enemies. July 1944. Mid-Atlantic. The Liberty ship's gentle rolling beneath Margaretti Schull's feet defied everything Nazi propaganda had promised about transport to America. The former Nachrichtenhelferin had been told to expect cargo holds packed with prisoners like cattle, starvation rations, and American guards who took pleasure in tormenting captives. Instead, she stood on the deck of the SS James Oglethorpe, watching seabirds wheel against blue horizons, while American Webaids explained the day's schedule in carefully enunciated German phrases. Below decks, 217 other German women auxiliaries occupied segregated quarters with proper bunks, sanitation facilities, and 3 daily meals served on metal trays, identical to those used by American military personnel. Naval logs from summer 1944 document that German women prisoners crossing to American internment received standardized rations of 2,200 calories daily, including fresh bread, baked on board, powdered milk, reconstituted daily, and coffee with actual sugar. Ship manifests show medical supplies allocated specifically for women's needs, sanitary supplies, iron supplements, and skincare products, items that had vanished from German female military installations by 1943. Most prisoners gained weight during the 12-day crossing, medical examinations at debarkation showing average increases of 3.4 pounds per woman. The arrival at Hampton Roads, Virginia, presented German women with an America that propaganda minister Goebbels had declared impossible. The port facilities handled more vehicles daily than Berlin managed weekly. From the deck, prisoners observed endless rows of supply trucks, tanks, and equipment awaiting shipment to Europe. One former Signal Corps auxiliary wrote in her carefully censored letter home, "The Americans send to Europe in one day what we produced in months. I understand now why our officers looked so worried." The train journey inland provided further education in American gender relations. Unlike the strictly segregated military structure of the Reich, German women observed female American conductors, station managers, and railway administrators performing roles reserved exclusively for men in Germany. They traveled in standard passenger coaches with upholstered seats, dining cars serving full meals, and observation cars with panoramic windows. Military records document that the women were not handcuffed or physically restrained during transport, a level of trust incomprehensible to prisoners trained to expect American brutality. At Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia, the primary internment facility for female German prisoners, 1,642 women found accommodations that exceeded peacetime standards for German military women. The compound included heated barracks with proper beds and linens, indoor plumbing with hot water, adequate lighting, and recreational spaces. Most significantly, the camp was staffed primarily by female military personnel, WAGs, who maintained professional but humane supervision. Captain Eleanor Roberts, the camp commandant, established protocols emphasizing rehabilitation rather than punishment. The camp exchanges delivered the deepest impact. According to quartermaster records, women prisoners could purchase items unimaginable in wartime Germany: skin cream, lipstick, hair products, chocolate, and writing materials. For prisoners earning 80 cents daily for voluntary labor, a tube of Pond's cold cream at 35 cents or Tangy lipstick at 49 cents represented luxury beyond imagination. In Germany, such items required black market connections or had disappeared entirely. American female guards bringing flowers for barracks decoration became symbolic of the fundamental distinction between societies. Each Saturday, fresh bouquets appeared in common areas, wildflowers in summer, hothouse blooms in winter. This practice, documented in camp administrative records as morale maintenance protocol, represented an approach to prisoners fundamentally opposed to Nazi methods. German women, who had been told Americans would abuse them instead, found guards who brought them daisies, believing that even enemies deserved beauty in their surroundings. Fall 1944. Fort Devens, Massachusetts. The hospital ward gleamed with cleanliness as Greta Müller folded white linens with practiced hands. Once a radar plotter for the Luftwaffe, she now worked alongside American nurses, earning 80 cents daily, the same wage paid to male German prisoners. The 8-hour shifts included 2 15-minute rest breaks and a 30-minute lunch period, standards that matched American civilian labor regulations. Through the windows, she watched female doctors in white coats walking between buildings, their authority unchallenged by male staff, a sight impossible in German military hospitals, where women served only as nurses regardless of training. Across American internment facilities, German women prisoners worked in roles that respected their skills. Records from 1944 to 1945 show 872 women assigned to medical support, 763 to clerical duties, 541 to kitchen service, and 412 to light agricultural labor. None worked in dangerous conditions or heavy industry. Camp logs documented strict enforcement of safety rules and rest periods, with medical checks twice monthly for all working prisoners. The women received the same protective equipment as American workers: masks in medical settings, gloves for agricultural tasks, proper footwear for all duties. Women from Fort Oglethorpe, working at nearby Chickamauga Park farms, tended victory gardens alongside American female agricultural supervisors. They learned modern farming methods using equipment unavailable in rural Germany. The supervisors, many holding degrees from agricultural colleges, shared knowledge freely with enemy prisoners. Several German women later recorded their surprise at American farming efficiency, a single worker managing acreage that would require 10 laborers in Germany. At Station Hospital 4219, German prisoners with nursing experience assisted with wounded American soldiers returned from Europe. Military medical records document that German women prisoners provided care to 17,432 American patients between November 1944 and August 1945. The American Red Cross reported no incidents of mistreatment or neglect by prisoner staff. Instead, many returning soldiers expressed surprise at receiving competent care from women who months earlier had supported the enemy war effort. The clerical pools at Fort Devens, where German women with typing skills worked alongside American civilian employees, revealed democratic workplace norms. American women supervisors treated prisoners as capable colleagues rather than enemies or inferiors. German prisoners observed American women giving directions to male subordinates, making decisions without seeking male approval, and receiving equal pay for equal work. These daily interactions contradicted Nazi gender ideology more effectively than any lecture or film could. The most powerful symbol came on March 8, 1945, International Women's Day. Army records document that American WAB officers at Fort Oglethorpe presented each German prisoner with a single yellow rose and a small card printed with the words "For peace among women of all nations." This gesture, costing the military exactly $213.50 for 427 roses, accomplished more for democratic re-education than thousands spent on formal programs. Women who had been taught that Americans were barbaric savages received flowers from their captors on a day celebrating womanhood across cultural divides. In the camp gardens at Fort Devens, German prisoners worked with American landscapers to plant flower beds visible from the women's barracks. Unlike the cut flowers that wilted within days, these plantings would bloom season after season. The symbolism was clear even to women whose faith in Nazi ideology remained strong. Their American captors invested in beauty that prisoners would enjoy long-term, a physical contradiction to warnings of American cruelty. German women prisoners watered these gardens daily, their documentation reporting 37 varieties of flowering plants maintained in the compound. This simple task of nurturing life amid wartime death began shifting perspectives from destruction toward renewal. December 1944. Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia. The pine boughs and holly berries adorning the camp mess hall filled the air with forest scents that reminded Helga Weber of Christmases in Bavaria, but the abundance surrounding these decorations belonged to another world entirely. American civilian women from nearby Chattanooga arrived bearing handmade ornaments, cookies in tins, and knitted scarves, gifts for enemy women, whose husbands, brothers and fathers they were fighting in Europe. This incomprehensible kindness during wartime created a cognitive dissonance that Nazi ideology couldn't survive. Camp records document that local church groups provided 1,842 individual gift packages for German women prisoners that Christmas, despite their own families facing wartime rationing and separation from men serving overseas. The Christmas program included a screening of It's a Wonderful Life, with German subtitles prepared by American university students. The film, with its portrayal of American small-town life and individual struggle against financial hardship, contradicted everything the women had been taught about American society. The camp commandant's report noted that 87% of prisoners attended the voluntary screening, many returning for a second viewing. More significant than entertainment, these films provided visual evidence of an American reality that Nazi propaganda had declared fictitious. By January 1945, the camp library contained 2,736 volumes, including German language books and English texts for those learning the language. Circulation records show that novels by American women authors, Willa Cather, Pearl Buck, Louisa May Alcott, proved especially popular among prisoners. These books depicting strong, independent female characters resonated with women raised under Nazi gender restrictions. One prisoner wrote in her diary, later preserved in military archives, "These American women in books make decisions without men. They own property, choose husbands, run businesses." If this is true, everything we were told is false. The availability of beauty products in camp exchanges revealed American attitudes toward femininity even during wartime. Quarterly procurement records show regular shipments of face cream, powder, lipstick, and hair products. German women used their work wages to purchase items that had disappeared from German stores years earlier. A bottle of Jergens lotion at 39 cents, Tangy lipstick at 49 cents, or Breck shampoo at 35 cents represented not merely cosmetics, but evidence that American women maintained their identity during war rather than surrendering femininity to the state, as German women had been required to do. Spring 1945 brought permission for prisoners to establish garden plots outside barracks. Seeds provided by American Agricultural Extension Services allowed women to grow flowers alongside vegetables, an allowance for beauty amid utility that exemplified fundamental differences in societal values. Camp records from April 1945 document distribution of 438 seed packets to prisoners, including marigolds, zinnias, petunias, and daisies. These gardens, tended by women who years earlier had dedicated themselves to Nazi victory, now nurtured life in American soil, creating transitional spaces where ideological transformation could take root alongside flowers. Letters home, heavily censored but preserved in military archives, reveal evolving perspectives. A former Signals auxiliary wrote in March 1945, "The American women guards bring fresh flowers to our dormitory weekly. Yesterday I asked why they waste resources on enemy prisoners. The guard seemed confused by my question. She said, 'Because everyone needs beauty to feel human.' I have thought about this answer for days." Another wrote, "The American women doctors treat illness I suffered with for years in Germany. They express shock that such conditions were left untreated. Medical care here is not for elites only, but for everyone, even enemies." The Women's Camp newsletter, permitted under supervision, published poetry, essays and artwork by prisoners. The spring 1945 edition, preserved in military archives, featured drawings of the camp gardens with an essay titled "Seeds of Understanding," comparing ideological transformation to horticulture. The author, anonymous but identified as a former Nazi Party member, wrote, "Like flowers emerging from seemingly dead winter soil, new thoughts grow in minds once closed. Both require patience, proper conditions, and gentle care rather than force." May 1945, Fort Devens, Massachusetts. The black and white newsreel images flickered across the recreation hall wall as 267 German women prisoners watched their homeland crumble. Berlin in ruins. Hitler dead by suicide. The Wehrmacht surrendering unconditionally. For Ingrid Hoffmann, former Nazi Party member and Luftwaffe auxiliary, these images delivered final confirmation that everything she had believed was built on lies. The woman who had once proudly worn a swastika pin now sat among fellow prisoners as American authorities documented Nazi atrocities at camps with names that would forever haunt German consciousness. Dachau, Bergen-Belsen, Buchenwald. Military records note that 32 women required medical attention for shock after these screenings, while 47 others requested private meetings with American chaplains to discuss moral questions previously unexamined. The formal re-education program, initiated in American POW camps following German surrender, operated differently for women prisoners than for men. Records from the Provost Marshal General's office show that female-specific curriculum emphasized democratic civic participation, evidence of women's professional achievements in America, and comparative study of women's lives under different political systems. At Fort Oglethorpe, Wace, Lieutenant Marion Thompson conducted twice-weekly discussion groups where German prisoners compared propaganda claims about American women with their direct observations. Attendance logs show these voluntary sessions averaged 94% participation among eligible prisoners, significantly higher than the 61% rate for male POWs in comparable programs. Letters arriving from Germany delivered devastating confirmation of conditions at home. Army censors documented that 87% of correspondence received by women prisoners between June and December 1945 described severe food shortages, destroyed housing, and civilian suffering exceeding anything German propaganda had attributed to Allied bombing. A former Signals auxiliary received word that her parents in Dresden survived on 970 calories daily, less than half her 2,200-calorie ration as an enemy prisoner in America. These stark numerical contrasts demolished any remaining illusions about Nazi leadership's concern for German civilians. The administration of women's POW compounds increasingly incorporated democratic principles as 1945 progressed. Camp records document the establishment of prisoner committees elected by secret ballot to address barracks conditions, work assignments, and recreational activities. At Fort Devens, German women prisoners established a camp improvement society that presented formal proposals to American authorities. Unlike the hierarchical command structure of Nazi organizations, these committees operated through consensus and open debate, political practices most prisoners had never experienced. Military observers noted that former Nazi Party members initially resisted but gradually participated in these democratic processes, with 37 documented cases of women who had been party officials subsequently serving on elected prisoner committees. Medical examinations conducted in autumn 1945 provided scientific evidence of captivity's unexpected benefits. Army Medical Corps data shows German women prisoners gained an average of 9.7 pounds during internment, with notable improvements in dental health, vitamin levels, and overall physical condition. Psychological assessments, though primitive by modern standards, documented significant declines in anxiety and stress markers despite the uncertainty of captivity. The physical reality of improved health under American imprisonment versus deterioration under Nazi protection constituted evidence no propaganda could counter. Most symbolically powerful was the joint flower planting ceremony at Fort Oglethorpe in October 1945. American Wehrmacht officers and German prisoners together planted 500 perennial bulbs, tulips, daffodils, and crocuses in beds surrounding the camp chapel. These flowers would bloom the following spring, long after many prisoners had returned to Germany. Camp Commandant Captain Eleanor Roberts, as recorded in her official report, told the assembled women, "These flowers will bloom next year whether we are here to see them or not. They represent our hope that what we plant today, understanding between former enemies, will similarly flower in years to come." The German women, who had arrived expecting abuse from American barbarians, now knelt alongside their captors, hands together in the same soil, planting flowers neither group might ever see bloom. A powerful metaphor for post-war reconciliation that many would carry home to a devastated Germany. June 1946. Frankfurt, Germany. The American transport plane descended toward a landscape of rubble where once proud buildings had stood. Elizabeth Schmidt clutched a small packet of zinnia seeds given to her by an American Wehrmacht officer upon departure from Fort Oglethorpe. After 27 months as a prisoner of war, she was returning to a homeland physically and ideologically demolished. Unlike the gaunt, hollow-eyed civilians who greeted returning prisoners, Elizabeth and her fellow former POWs arrived with healthy complexions, proper clothing, and a radically transformed worldview. Medical processing records at Frankfurt documented that women returning from American captivity weighed on average 12.4 pounds more than when captured and showed no signs of malnutrition, while civilian German women of comparable age displayed symptoms of prolonged vitamin deficiency and stress-related ailments. Between 1946 and 1947, all 3,427 German women prisoners returned to a society where 78% of urban housing had been damaged or destroyed. These women, who had experienced relative comfort and consistent meals in American camps, now faced extreme scarcity that civilians had endured for years. The contrast created initial social friction, with some civilians resenting former prisoners who appeared untouched by war's devastation. Yet, within months, these women emerged as critical resources in Germany's reconstruction. Occupation Authority records from 1947 show that former women POWs secured administrative positions at significantly higher rates than other German women, with 42% employed in military government offices by 1948, compared to 7% of women without American internment experience. The democratic processes experienced in camps translated directly to civic participation. In Frankfurt, Munich, and Hamburg, women who had served on prison camp committees became organizers of neighborhood reconstruction councils. Electoral records from Bavaria's first post-war municipal elections show former POWs running for local offices at 3 times the rate of other eligible women. Helga Weber, once a Luftwaffe radar technician who expected punishment from Americans, instead was elected to Munich's city council in 1948 after organizing a community garden program modeled on the Fort Devens horticulture project. Her campaign literature included the slogan, "Democracy grows like gardens through care and patience." Professional skills acquired in American camps proved invaluable in rebuilding. The 872 women who had worked in medical support roles in POW hospitals found immediate employment in Germany's devastated healthcare system. Former clerical workers applied American organizational methods to the massive task of civil record reconstruction. Military government assessment reports from 1948 specifically highlighted the contributions of former women POWs, noting their exceptional adaptability to democratic administrative systems and notable absence of authoritarian management styles compared to other Germans with similar pre-war backgrounds. The generational impact extended beyond the women themselves. Educational researcher Dr. Margarete Kopp's 1957 study documented that children of former women POWs displayed measurably more democratic attitudes than peers. Her research, tracking 1,200 German teenagers, found that those whose mothers had been American prisoners scored 37% higher on metrics of democratic values and 42% lower on authoritarian tendencies. These mothers had transmitted not just stories, but fundamental conceptual frameworks about human dignity, individual rights, and democratic processes. The symbolic relationship with flowers continued. Agricultural extension records from American occupation authorities document that former women POWs requested and received American flower varieties for community gardens at twice the rate of other German civilians. Zinnia, marigold, and petunia seeds, flowers they had grown in camp gardens, became living reminders of lessons learned in captivity. In Heidelberg, 27 former POWs established a public garden featuring only varieties they had grown while interned at Fort Oglethorpe and Fort Devens. The garden, initially viewed with suspicion by some locals as too American, became by 1955 a popular destination for Sunday walks. Decades later, in oral histories collected for the German Federal Archives in the 1980s, these former prisoners consistently identified American treatment as transformative. Ilse Braun, who had once expected brutality and received a wildflower instead, summarized the experience shared by many. "They could have treated us as we had been told Americans would. Instead, they gave us flowers and showed us democracy through small daily kindnesses." I returned to Germany carrying not hatred but hope, not vengeance but vision for a different future. This hope, planted alongside zinnias and democracy, bloomed into Germany's post-war miracle, beautiful and unexpected as flowers growing from ruins.